Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and this morning I'm looking at a book from Jordan's Publishing Limited, and it's the family law imprint that they use for these publications. This is an important work in family law for anybody, both nationally and internationally involved in matters and issues concerning family law. The book is called The International Survey of Family Law for 2014. It's their 2014 edition, and it's been edited by Professor Bill Atkin. And as I said, it's been published by the Jordan's Family Law imprint and on behalf of the International Society of Family Law. Now, my wife Elizabeth and I have given this this review, a title, a bumper edition of recent developments in family law across the world. And I'll tell you a little bit about what we say about the book in a minute. Let's have a look at it. It's a hardback. Interesting cover on the front there. It's the spine. Then at the back you've got the usual blurb mentioning General Editor Professor Bill Atkin. And you've got basically the contents. It's also available as an ebook. The back of it has no index, which I think is important for you to bear in mind. So it just finishes with a conclusion. Actually, that's dealing with Zimbabwe. Now at the front, you've got the standard information about the editor. There's an assistant editor, associate editor in Africa, Farenda Banda. Now the contents run through by country, starting with Australia, and it runs all the way through England and Wales, India, Kenya, the Netherlands, and then right down to Zimbabwe at the end, Z. Now you've got detail about the International Society of Family Law, because it is an international book. Then you've got past information, detail about the contents throughout the world. Then there's an overview about the society itself, which I think is quite useful because, frankly, I did not know a lot about the information about this organisation, and I think it's useful. The preface is very helpful, and I refer to that in our review because there's a lot in it which gives you some idea of what the editor, Professor Atkin, is aiming to achieve with this book. Then you go into the individual countries themselves. So you start off, now I'm going to mention this again, at the beginning you have a headline, so it's Australia, then the headline, the name of the person who's written it. Then you've got in French a résumé. They call it an abstract sometimes, but it gives, for those whose first language is not English, but possibly another language, French. And then it starts off with a structure of an introduction, then the rest of it is in English for each chapter. Then there are various bits and pieces, and then at the end you get a conclusion. So it's really looking at the individual countries that have been selected, the contributions. Again, Brazil is the next one. Again, you've got a resume again. Now, I do appreciate that for many people the preferred language today is English, but French is also extremely useful, and that's one of the reasons why they've added that, and I think that's of great assistance, notwithstanding the type of language that is specified as being in use, and it's quite important obviously to know that. Now let me say a little bit about the book itself. In his preface, Professor Bill Atkin poses a fundamental question. We sometimes ask what the purpose of family law is. In many ways, the main answer to this question is to be found in the International Survey of Family Law, which is for the year 2014, which is an annual review of developments in family law across the world under the auspices of the International Society of Family Law. And there's, as I say, detail about that society in the book. This year's edition covers developments in over 20 countries, written by academics and family law experts, and is truly global with its wide content. Atkins says he appreciates how significant family law is for much of our existence, and how his own preconceptions about the purpose and shape of family law are now challenged by what is happening elsewhere in the world, and not just in the England and Wales jurisdiction. We can certainly confirm, reading this excellent survey, that we find ourselves in the same position as the editor. Atkin goes on to expand his original point, asking these additional questions about family law, and I think it's quite valuable to think of what he's posing, and this again is in the preface. Is it to control how we live? That's family law. To empower people, to facilitate people as they sort out their personal lives, to lay down sensible ground rules for personal relationships, to reflect local culture and values, to protect the vulnerable? Or is it something else, or a combination of a variety of things? No easy answer, but it's probably all of those and more, just so we get it right. So what I say is, well, it's actually all about these matters, yes, and more, although many of the chapters are about children, especially those who are vulnerable across the world. And I think that's where, for me as a practitioner, the value comes in. And I think that will be the case actually for many practitioners and advisors. Bill Atkin has seen the number wishing to contribute to this survey rise to a total of 46 for this edition, which reflects not just the amount of work involved, but also the range which this substantive law area covers, and the different countries and languages involved. Each contribution has a resume, or French language abstract, at the beginning of the chapter, as I've shown you, which is also specific to a particular country and the issues found there. The book's just over 500 pages long, with useful detailed footnotes, subheading numbering within the main chapters, where appropriate. There's not a lot of it, thankfully. There's no index, but readers will find the overview on the International Society of Family Law, I think, most informative, because it puts everything in a little bit of perspective. One thing which will strike the reader as familiar are the issues we face in England and Wales under the subtitle The Battle for Parenthood, Lesbian Mothers and Biological Fathers, which reflect probably more important recent case law studies here and illustrate the development of the common law in our own jurisdiction. And as I've said many times before, what we have here can be reflected in pretty similar points of view and problems, notwithstanding religious and cultural difficulties internationally. And then we read of events, therefore, in other jurisdictions which certainly make us realise that the problems Atkin outlines with his questions in the preface have some answers, and that what we face as issues in family law here, as I've said, are not really much different from the problems in other jurisdictions, notwithstanding all the different legal systems and approaches, linguistic, procedural, and so forth. Let me conclude by saying Atkin's International Survey of Family Law for 2014 does just that, and is a great contribution to the Jordan Family Law Library of Books, which we depend upon so much for our practices. Thank you to all concerned, and I will say I'm very grateful that they produced this, because we as practitioners could not really do our jobs as well if it wasn't for the actual work, certainly which Jordan and family law give us, because this is where the law is found and where the persuasive precedents are about how we're going to go forward. And so I do feel that we're very grateful to have the work of these very experienced, learned people giving us the help that we need. Without it, I think both we as practitioners, the judiciary, everybody else would be actually at a bit of a loss as to know what to do in some circumstances, because you do have to compare how things are. Let's go to the middle of the book. This is actually Hong Kong, right in the middle. You've got some footnotes at the bottom, you can see. You haven't got much in the way of numbering. You've got some subheads and chapter numbering there, and Roman letters and so forth. It's about 500 pages, quite a heavy book actually, as a hardback. And there again the contents, which you can see just running through. And I did mention England and Wales, and that you can see, in fact, the England and Wales element is mainly case law, which is quite helpful. You've got a whole range of other areas. Papua New Guinea is featured, PNG, which is there. And you've got a whole New Zealand, you've got a whole range of different countries. Then you've got the United States of America right at the back, and Zimbabwe. And as I say, there isn't, just to remind you again, there is information about the International Society of Family Law. Because I do think it's important to remember that while we are an island and we have our own jurisdiction, we've given the common law to an awful lot of people. And it's quite useful to know what the thinking is internationally, because this is a flavour of international thinking on family law. So thank you to Professor Bill Atkin for editing this. Thank you to all the contributors, and a special thanks to Jordan and Family Law. You make our lives much easier with this, so thanks a lot. Bye-bye.